I died on a Monday, which honestly felt on brand. Rain stitched the city together in crooked seams, turning neon signs into watercolor blurs. I sprinted through the crosswalk with a paper cup clutched like a life raft and a laptop bag slapping against my hip. My blouse wore a coffee stain shaped like a tragic country. Somewhere behind me, a bus hissed and a horn complained. Somewhere ahead, a client waited to fire me. "Hold the door," I shouted at fate, which predictably did not. The elevator in the mirror-light building closed in my face with the dispassionate sigh of a bureaucrat. I caught my reflection in the mirrored panel. Frizz halo, mascara smudge, damp, jacket, and thought if chaos were a person, she'd ask me for styling tips. My phone vibrated against my palm. A text from my ex. "Evan, we need to talk." Of course we did. We always needed to talk right before something unfortunate happened to me. The last time he sent that sentence, he confessed he'd accidentally taken my portfolio to pitch a project we discussed, which turned out to be a very solo he situation. The time before that, he needed to talk about how we wanted different things, like honesty, for instance. The elevator slid back open at last, half an hour later than Mercy. Upstairs, the receptionist offered a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "Ms. Cho? They went ahead without you. I love being a cautionary tale," I said, and she blessed me with the gift of a sympathetic shrug. The meeting room door stood ajar. Inside, the client, sleek bun, sleeker watch, sat with two men in suits who were not me. She didn't look up when I knocked. "We've decided to go in a different direction," she said to the room, which included the window, the succulent, and a woman whose stomach just sank through the floor. "Best of luck." "Different direction," I echoed, because I am nothing if not a helpful echo. "Northeast?" "Emotionally? Spiritually?" No one laughed. I nodded like I'd just been handed an award for most fired, and backed out of the room with grace that would impress exactly no one. Back on the sidewalk, the rain had upgraded to melodrama. My umbrella flipped inside out like a despairing tulip. I considered wrestling it, then remembered dignity and surrendered. The city smelled like wet metal and street food. My phone buzzed again. "Evan, can you call me?" I typed, "I'm busy being dumped by capitalism," but didn't send it. Instead, I pressed the phone to my ear and listened to the dial tone, as if it could advise me. The crosswalk light blinked red, then green, in its tiny act of mercy. I stepped off the curb and looked up. That's when I saw him. He stood on the edge of the Hyatt rooftop, black suit, no umbrella, rain combing through dark hair like impatient fingers. Even from the street, even through the living static of the downpour, he looked steady. Too steady for someone standing in a place built for not standing. Streams of water chased one another down his jaw and vanished into the collar of his coat. He had the kind of face that makes strangers invent a past for you. A woman beside me gasped. "He's going to—" "I'm calling 911, someone said. "Hey!" I cupped my hands around my mouth, as if volume could build a bridge. "Don't—" The man looked down, not at me, through me. Past me. He didn't smile, didn't wave, didn't ask for help. He just tilted his head a fraction, like he was listening to a private joke, and took one clean step into the air. Everything slowed in that fake way time does when it doesn't want to take responsibility. The city inhaled. The neon held its breath. The rain turned to silver strings. He fell like a question with no punctuation. I didn't move at first. Shock is a bucket of ice dumped on the brain. Sound left me. The world became a silent film. Somewhere a horn tried to push its way back into reality. My knees loosened. I stepped backward without looking, phone still at my ear, a dial tone stitching a thin line through the quiet. Headlights bloomed to my left. Oh, I thought, too late. The car's grille was an iron sunrise. There was no screech, only the heavy, decisive thud of matter meeting matter. The world snapped from slow to fast. The phone spooled away. Rain exploded around me as I hit the asphalt. The air knocked out of my lungs, the taste of pennies and cloud in my mouth. A chorus of strangers turned into a single panicked voice I couldn't understand. I stared up at the sky. The Hyatt roof was empty now, save for the rain. For a heartbeat, ridiculous stubborn, I thought I saw a dark silhouette standing, where the man had stood, hands in pockets, watching me with quiet interest. Then a blink washed it away. Heat drained from my fingers. My thoughts stacked in a neat, unhelpful column, Evan's text. Fired. Umbrella. Suit on the roof. Headlights. Oh. The edges of everything went soft, like the city had been erased and redrawn in chalk. So, this is it? I asked no one, or maybe the rain. This is how it ends? This banal? The last thing I felt was a small, almost funny relief that I wouldn't have to call Evan back. And then I fell through the Monday. The first thing I felt was the wind. Cold, thin, restless. It pressed against my skin like curious fingers. The second thing was wrongness. I wasn't lying on wet asphalt anymore. No paramedics. No car horn. No panicked strangers. Just a roof high above a sleeping city, the edge of it lined with broken fencing. And old warning signs. The kind that suggested lawsuits more than safety. Fog rolled over the ledge like it had nowhere better to be. The moon threw silver across puddles and cracked concrete. A rusted chair sat on its side, one leg missing. And he was there. The man from the Hyatt roof leaned against the railing like he'd been waiting for a bus. His coat was still dry somehow. The rain that had baptized the whole city earlier didn't seem to exist here. You? I croaked, sitting up. My ribs protested. You jumped, and you got hit by a car. His voice was calm, edged with a smooth kind of amusement. We all have our hobbies. I blinked at him. Am I dead? That depends. He pushed off the railing, tall and deliberate, moving like someone who knew time wouldn't dare argue with him. On whether you want to stay that way. Up close, his eyes carried a faint gold light, like lanterns behind smoked glass. The rest of him looked maddeningly normal. Black hair, sharp cheekbones, about my age if you ignored the centuries sitting in his posture. Let me guess, I said. This is the part where you tell me it was all a dream, and then I wake up with inspirational new priorities. He gave a slow, unhurried smile. Dream? Sure. Let's call it that. I pulled my knees up. Great. My subconscious has budget cuts, apparently. Couldn't even spring for a hospital scene. You're not dreaming. He crouched a few feet away, hands resting loosely over his knees. You're between things. Life. Death. Options. Options, I repeated. Because sometimes sarcasm is the only rope you've got. Do they include a refund? No refunds. His smile thinned, but not unkindly. But there's a deal on the table. I waited. He had the sort of voice people obeyed without deciding to. There are entities, he said after a moment. Tied to fear, to loss. They feed on it. Lately they've been restless. Crossing lines they shouldn't. Someone needs to keep an eye on them. Someone, I echoed. Someone alive, he corrected. Someone who can see both sides. Who owes me a favor. His glance at me was brief but unmistakable. I laughed, too loudly. Hold on. You want me to be, what, your intern? For ghosts? They're not ghosts. Demons, then? Not exactly. Shadow people? Emotional support poltergeists? That almost smile returned, crooked this time. Call them what you want, the job's the same. You see what others can't. You tell me when things start leaking through. And in return, you go back. Breathing, heartbeat, life. He leaned back on his heels like it wasn't a big offer. Fair trade. I stared at him. The roof tilted a little under my pulse. Or I could just... not? Maybe move on to whatever's next. Harps? Eternal light? Netflix? He didn't answer, which felt like an answer. The fog shifted around us, carrying something that might have been a whisper. For a moment, the air tasted like iron and old rain. What happens, I said slowly, if I say yes? You go back, he repeated, with a few side effects. Define side effects. You'll see things. His golden eyes caught the moonlight. Things that see you back. Oh, fantastic. Love that for me. I buried my face in my hands for a second. I'm not qualified for this. I scream when toast burns. You'll adjust. He stood, offering a hand like we were about to shake on a lunch bill. I looked at it. This is insane. Yes. And probably a dream. If it helps... The wind pressed harder at my back, as if the whole world leaned in to hear my answer. Somewhere under my ribs, life, or the lack of it, felt very, very quiet. Fine, I said, taking his hand. But when I wake up, I'm suing my subconscious. His grip was warm. Too warm. The fog folded over us like a closing curtain. "Welcome back, Lian," he said. And the roof was gone. I woke up to the sound of my radiator trying to kill itself. The ceiling of my apartment sagged in familiar defeat. My curtains let in the watery light of a city morning, the kind that smelled like wet pavement and deadlines. I was in my own bed, wearing the same jeans I'd died in, minus the blood, the impact, the whole being hit by a car thing. I stared at the ceiling fan. It wasn't spinning. My brain wasn't either. "Okay," I told my apartment, my voice rasping like it hadn't been used in centuries. That was weird, but dreamlike. That was the comforting theory. Roof guy, golden eyes, ghost internship offer. Just my subconscious staging experimental theater while my body lay in a hospital bed somewhere. Except there was no hospital. No tubes, no beeping machines. Just my rent-controlled corner of chaos. Dishes leaning in the sink like drunks. A plant on. The windowsill judging me silently. Bills fanned out on the coffee table like losing cards. My phone sat on the nightstand. I grabbed it like proof. No missed calls from the afterlife. Just a text from my landlord about the water bill, and one from Evan. "Evan, can we meet today?" Oh, good. The ex-boyfriend apocalypse continued right on schedule. I peeled myself off the bed, showered until my skin remembered being alive, and left the apartment armed with caffeine money and a thin sense of reality. The city looked the same. That was the first wrong thing. People hurried under umbrellas, buses sighed, someone yelled at a taxi. Monday kept Monday-ing like it hadn't noticed me die. I ducked into my usual coffee shop, a place where baristas wore ironic beanies, and jazz played softly enough to make you wonder if you imagined it. I ordered something too expensive with oat milk, and sat near the window. That's when I saw the first one. Behind the man in line, a perfectly normal guy in a business suit clutching his briefcase. Something clung. It looked like a shadow, but wrong. Not attached to his body, not obeying light. A smudge shaped vaguely like a person, edges rippling as if it was breathing. I blinked hard. The thing leaned close to the man's ear, though no one else seemed to notice. "They'll find out," it whispered. I heard it. Clear as spilled coffee. A voice like dry leaves. The man shivered, adjusting his tie. He didn't look back. I gripped my cup. "Okay," I told myself. "Concussion. Probably a brain bleed. WebMD says hallucinations happen all the time." Another one slithered by the door. A smear of darkness trailing after a woman pushing a stroller. "Not enough," it breathed. "Never enough." I drank my latte too fast, scalding my tongue. By lunchtime, the city was full of them. Shadows hunched near bus stops, perched on benches, clinging to strangers like anxiety-shaped backpacks, always whispering, always ignored. I tried ignoring them too. That went great for about 3 blocks. Evan picked the cafe on 9th, the kind with plants hanging everywhere like oxygen was trendy. He was already there when I arrived, wearing his usual "I'm an artist" uniform, black turtleneck, tortured expression, hair carefully messy. "Lian," he said, standing like we were in a French film. "You look great." "Thanks," I said. "You look like you have bad news." He winced. That's when I noticed the shadow behind him. This one wasn't whispering. It loomed. Big. Darker than the others, edges twitching like it barely fit into its shape. "Liar," it hissed, voice wet as tar. "Took what wasn't yours. Smile while you do it." My stomach flipped. "Are you okay?" Evan asked. I stared at the thing behind him. "Do you feel like you're being haunted?" He blinked. "What?" The shadow twisted closer to his ear. "She knows," it sang softly. "She knows, she knows, she—" I knocked my latte over just to make it shut up. Milk tsunami across the table. Evan jumped back. "Lian. Sorry," I said too brightly. "Hallucination. Or stroke. Don't mind me." He opened his mouth, probably to begin the "we need to talk" speech, but I was already backing toward the door, heart banging like it wanted out. Because either I'd lost my mind, or the world had changed while I wasn't looking. The city looked different at night. Quieter. Like someone had turned the volume down on reality. Streetlights hummed, wind hissed through alleyways, and the shadows, well, the shadows had opinions. Kael walked a few steps ahead, hands in his coat pockets, the perfect tour guide for things no one wanted to see. The man didn't even bother with umbrellas. The drizzle bent around him like it knew better. Are we going to talk about the floating horror movie extras? I asked, hugging myself against the cold. They're not ghosts, he said, voice even, almost bored. Not demons either. Think of them as echoes. Of what? Bad vibes? Fear, he said simply. Pain, regret. The things people try to bury, they leak. I stumbled over a crack in the sidewalk. So therapy dropouts? That almost smile flickered across his face. There and gone. Something like that. We cut through a park. Empty swings creaked in the wind. Benches sat under skeletal trees, and the whole place felt abandoned by more than just people. The shadows were everywhere, perched in branches, sprawled across pathways, whispering things I didn't want to hear. One leaned close as I passed. Failure, it breathed. The word curling cold fingers around my spine. Everyone saw. I walked faster. Kael didn't even glance at it. They can't touch you, he said. Comforting, I muttered, since they apparently majored in psychological warfare. Most people can't see them, he said. They only feel the weight. A bad dream. A mood they can't shake. That's enough for the shadows to feed on. I watched one crawl along the edge of the fountain like spilled ink. And you? Why do you get the VIP pass? He paused at the fountain's rim, golden eyes catching the streetlight. Contract. The word landed heavy. With them? I asked. With the thing behind them, he said. I made a deal a long time ago. Too long. I stop the worst of it, keep the balance, and eventually I get out. Out, I repeated. As in... He didn't answer. The silence said enough. The wind picked up, scattering dead leaves across the concrete. His coat flared around his legs like something out of a noir film. You think I like this? He said finally, voice low. 1 foot in the human world, 1 in the dark. It's exhausting. I studied him. The sarcasm was still there, dry as ever, but under it, yeah, tired. The kind of tired that doesn't come from lack of sleep, but from carrying too much for too long. We climbed a fire escape to the rooftops. From up here, the city glowed like someone spilled a jewelry box across black velvet. Shadows clung to billboards and chimneys, hunched and muttering. So what, you just babysit them? I asked. I stop them when they try to break through, he said. Fear is one thing. What waits on the other side of fear is worse. I didn't ask what waited. Some part of me already knew I didn't want the brochure. By the time we crossed into another park, I'd gotten better at ignoring them. Don't look. Don't listen. Easy in theory. Harder when one followed me. It trailed behind like a second shadow, shape flickering at the edges. When I slowed, it slowed. When I stopped, it crouched just out of reach. Kael, I whispered. I have a fan club. He glanced back. Don't talk to it. I wasn't going to invite it to brunch. The thing leaned closer. Its voice slid under my skin like ice water. He won't save you, it murmured. Not when it matters. My throat went dry. Kael stopped walking. For a moment, the night held its breath. His eyes caught the moonlight, and the air around us sharpened, colder. Go, he told the shadow. Not loud, not angry. Just final. It shrieked, a sound only I seemed to hear, and dissolved into the pavement. I stared at the empty spot. Okay, I said. Lesson learned. Ignore the nightmare creatures. Trust the broody tour guide. Great life plan. Kael started walking again. It gets easier. Liar, I muttered. He didn't deny it. Maya lived above a bakery that smelled like warm sugar even at midnight. I was halfway to her door, clutching a bag of takeout, when the world decided to stop pretending it was normal. It started with the air. Heavy, too still. Like the city held its breath. Then the shadow crawled out of the alley. Not walked, crawled. It peeled itself off the bricks like wet paint, stretching into something vaguely human before its arms bent wrong and too long. Maya didn't see it. She was juggling her keys, talking over her shoulder about some office. Drama, completely unaware of the thing gathering itself behind her. I said brilliantly, frozen on the sidewalk. The shadow lunged. One moment Maya was laughing about her boss's new haircut. The next she was slammed against the wall, her words cutting off in a strangled gasp. The thing wrapped around her like liquid smoke, whispering fast and vicious into her ear. I dropped the takeout. "Hey!" My voice cracked. "Get off her." It didn't listen, obviously. They never do in movies either. Maya clawed at her throat, eyes wild. She wasn't choking on air, she was choking on fear. The shadow was pouring it into her, feeding on the panic blooming in her chest. Something snapped in me. Let her go. The words came out raw, louder than I thought I could shout. My vision tunneled, heat crawling up my arms. For a second, everything glowed. The street lamp, the bricks, the silver edges of the thing wrapped around my best friend. And then it hit me. Not physically, more like a surge through my ribs, a door slamming open inside my chest. The shadow screamed. The sound wasn't made for human ears. It rattled my teeth, scraped down my spine. It let go of Maya and reeled backward, smoking at the edges like I'd burned it without touching it. I stood there shaking, palms out, heart punching my ribs. Maya collapsed to her knees, coughing. What was that? The thing tried to regroup, its shape melting and reforming like tar in a storm. I didn't think. I just moved. Some instinct I didn't know I had dragged more of that heat up through my arms, out into the air between us. The shadow shrieked again, thinner this time, and shredded apart like someone scattering ashes. Silence crashed down. My breathing sounded too loud. The night smelled like rain and burnt metal. Maya clung to the wall, trembling. Her eyes darted from the empty alley to me like she wasn't sure which was scarier. "Lian, what just happened?" My hands shook. My whole body did. Because under the adrenaline, under the fear, there was something worse. Pain. Not mine. It ripped through my chest in flashes. Memories that weren't memories. A man yelling. A locked door. Someone crying until their voice cracked. Fear so thick it tasted like blood. I staggered back, clutching my ribs. The echoes weren't words, just feelings, raw and jagged, slicing through me until I couldn't tell where they ended and I began. Then a hand landed on my shoulder. Warm. Steady. Kael. He'd come out of nowhere, like he always did, coat dripping rain, expression unreadable. "It's gone," he said softly. I looked up at him, still shaking. I felt it. Everything. All of it. He crouched so we were eye level. Golden eyes, steady as firelight. "That's the price. For saving her?" My voice cracked on the last word. "For touching them at all?" He stood, scanning the shadows like he expected more. They carry what they feed on. You open the door even a little, it spills through. Maya was still pressed to the wall, pale and wide-eyed. "Lian, you burned it. I saw you." I didn't feel like someone who'd burned anything. I felt hollowed out, like the thing had taken pieces of me when it left. Kael offered me a hand. "You can't keep doing this." "What, saving people?" I snapped, taking it anyway, because my legs shook. "Surviving it," he said. "Your body won't hold if you keep taking that much in." I swallowed hard. The night was quiet again, but it didn't feel empty. The darkness between buildings waited, listening. Somewhere out there, more of those things moved. And they knew my name now. Evan picked another cafe. Of course he did. He always liked public places for serious conversations. It made him look like the reasonable one, the kind of guy who drank artisan coffee while breaking hearts. He was already there when I walked in, waving like we were still on speaking terms. His smile had that practiced warmth that made people trust him. It used to work on me. "Lian," he said, standing just enough to look polite. "Thanks for coming." I slid into the chair across from him. "You said it was urgent." "It is." He leaned in, elbows on the table, voice soft. "I need your help. There's this project, big one. They want a designer. I told them about you. You'd be perfect." The words were smooth, the kind meant to flatter you before the knife goes in. And behind him, the shadow loomed. It was bigger than before, darker, edges twitching like they could barely hold it together. It leaned close to his ear, voice dripping like oil. "She'll do the work. You take the credit, like last time. Smile while you do it." I gripped my cup until the cardboard bent. Evan kept talking about timelines and opportunities, how this could be our thing. He used "we" a lot, the way people do when they want you to forget it's only about them. The shadow hissed, "Lie. Lie." Liar. I stared at him. At it. At both. He didn't notice. Too busy painting pictures of success where my name didn't actually appear. Finally, I cut in. You mean you'll pitch it, and I'll do the work, and then you'll forget to mention me when the money shows up. Like last time. Evan blinked. That's not fair. No, I said, voice sharp. What's not fair is thinking I don't see it coming this time. The shadow grinned, if a smear of darkness could grin. Evan reached for my hand like he used to. Lian, I messed up before, okay? This is different. Because you say so? My laugh cracked like glass. Because you put on your serious voice? People at the next table glanced over. Evan hated scenes. He kept his tone low, soothing, like I was the unreasonable one. Just think about it, he said. We could both win here. I saw the shadow lean closer, whispering what he wouldn't. Use her. Use her again. Something in me twisted hard. I stood so fast the chair legs screeched against the floor. Lian. No. My hands shook. I'm done being useful to you. I left before he could answer, the bell above the cafe door jangling like applause. Back in my apartment, Kael was waiting. He did that sometimes, appearing like gravity didn't apply to him, leaning against my windowsill as if it belonged to him. Tonight his coat dripped rain onto my floor. Golden eyes watching me with that unreadable calm. Rough night? He asked. I threw my bag down hard enough to make my plant tremble. You think this is funny? One eyebrow lifted. I didn't say. You gave me this, I snapped. This. Life. These things following me. The whispers, the shadows, the nightmares. I didn't ask for any of it. Kael stayed silent. That was worse than arguing. I paced the tiny room, heart punching my ribs. I can't even have a conversation without seeing what people really are. Do you know what that's like? To look at someone you used to trust and watch the darkness behind them laugh at you? The rain tapped the window like it agreed. Kael finally said, You wanted to live. I wanted my life back, I shot back. Not this half-ruined version where everything hurts. The shadows in the corners stirred at my voice, restless. Kael's expression didn't change, but something flickered in his eyes. Regret, maybe. Or just more of that tiredness he wore like a second coat. There's always a price, he said quietly. I turned away before he could see my eyes burn. Because I hated it. Hated that he was right, and hated this new life even more for making me admit it. The mansion looked like it had been abandoned by both time and good taste. A crooked spine of staircases twisted up toward a roof caved in by storms, and windows gaped like empty eye sockets. The moonlight dripped over everything in pale silver, catching on the ivy strangling the walls. This is where you bring people for fun? I asked, voice echoing off the cracked marble steps as Kael pushed the heavy door open. Very serial killer, chic. Kael didn't smile. That was my first warning. Inside, the air was too cold for a summer night. Dust hovered like it didn't want to land. And the shadows. They didn't whisper here. They waited. At the end of the hall, in the rib cage of broken pillars, something moved. The figure leaned against the remnants of a throne, shape barely human, edges bleeding into the dark around it. When it spoke, the voice came from everywhere at once, deep and smooth as oil. Brought her at last, it said. My compliments, Kael. Took you long enough. My stomach turned. That's the thing in charge? Kael nodded once. I expected anger. Threats. Villain monologues. Instead, the creature sounded amused. She glows, you know. Fear pours off her in waves. They come to taste it, again and again. My hands went cold. I looked at Kael. What does it mean? He didn't answer. The creature laughed softly, a sound like cracking bones. Tell her, little guardian. Tell her why the shadows keep finding her. Something in Kael's jaw tightened. Kael, I said, pulse climbing. What is it talking about? He met my eyes then, and the weight there shut me up. The contract, he said slowly, like the words cost him. It wasn't clean. It never is. It gave you life, yes, but it marked you. The shadows feel it. They come because of it. Because of you. I stepped back like he'd hit me. So I'm bait? That's what this is? The creature's grin widened, thin and endless. Such a feast you've brought me, Kael. Her fear sings. Shut up, Kael snapped, voice like a blade. The walls vibrated faintly, dust trembling in the air. For the first time since I'd met him, Kael looked shaken. You knew, I whispered. My chest hurt. You saved me just so this thing could... No. He stepped closer, urgency breaking through his usual calm. I saved you because you're the only one who can end it. The contract bound you to them, yes, but it also gave you power they can't touch. You felt it that night in the alley. The memory hit hard, the burning heat, the scream of the shadow ripping apart. Kael's voice softened. You can kill them, Lian, all of them. Even him. He flicked a glance toward the throne, where the creature lounged, listening like it was at the theater. I shook my head. I didn't ask for any of this. I know. His eyes, catching the moonlight, looked less gold now and more tired metal. But I can't finish this. My contract keeps me here, chained to their rules. You're outside them. That's why they want you afraid. Fear feeds them. Strength starves them. The creature chuckled again. She won't survive it, Kael. You know she won't. Shut up. Kael's voice cracked like thunder this time, and the thing actually leaned back, smiling wider. I stared at him, words caught somewhere between my ribs and throat. Why didn't you tell me? His gaze found mine, steady, almost too steady. Because once you knew, you couldn't go back. And because I didn't want you to think I only saved you for this. Something in the way he said it made my pulse stumble. We stood in that ruined hall, the creature humming its awful little song, shadows crawling along the ceiling, and Kael looking at me like there was more he wanted to say but wouldn't. And I realized I wasn't sure which scared me more, ending this thing, or not surviving long enough to hear the rest of what was in his eyes. The city burned without fire, not real flames. Worse. Fear crawled through the streets like gasoline lit by invisible matches. It was everywhere, in the empty windows, the shaking streetlights, the way air itself shuddered under the weight of it. The Shadow Master had kept his promise. Every corner vomited darkness now. The shadows poured from alleys, from doorways, from the cracks between buildings. They climbed over rooftops like living ink, smeared across billboards, slithered along the pavement. Some wore faces, some didn't bother. They whispered, screamed, laughed in voices that didn't belong to anyone. People ran. Some froze. A few collapsed as their own private fears wrapped around them in oily coils, whispering their worst moments back into their ears. And in the middle of it, on the library steps, the Shadow Master stood tall and grinning, his body a silhouette holding shape only out of politeness. Such music, he said, voice slithering through the air like smoke. Your fear sings, little city. It feeds us. I stood across the square, chest heaving. Kael was at my side, coat flapping in the hot wind the shadows made as they swirled. His jaw was tight enough to crack stone. This is my fault, I whispered. No, Kael said, eyes on the creature. It's his. Always his. The master tilted his head as if listening. Ah, but without you, girl, they'd never have come so close. You burn so brightly with fear. They want to taste every drop. The shadows twitched at his words. Eager, hungry. I swallowed hard. My hands shook. My knees wanted to fold. The thing was right. Fear poured through me like water through broken glass. Maybe that was why I knew what I had to do. I can stop it, I said quietly. Kael turned sharply. Don't. He wants me afraid, I said. What happens if I'm not? Lian? No, listen. I faced him. The wind whipped hair across my mouth. The air tasted like static and nightmares, but I made my voice steady. If I go to him, if I give him what he thinks he wants, maybe I can take it away. Kael grabbed my arm. He'll kill you. Then he kills me. My throat felt tight, but the words stayed level. I'm done running. I'm done with deals and contracts and waiting for someone else to fix it. It ends tonight. His fingers flexed against my sleeve. In the chaos, his eyes burned gold, fierce and afraid. Lian, he said, voice low enough to get lost under the wind. If someone dies tonight, it's me. Not you. I shook my head. No more bargains, Kael. No more sacrifices. It's time to live, not keep surviving. For a moment the world narrowed to his grip on my arm and the thousand things he wasn't saying. Then his hand fell away. Stubborn, he muttered. Learned from the best. I walked toward the Shadow Master. The pavement rippled under my boots like the whole city was breathing wrong. Shadows closed in, twitching with hunger, but none touched me yet. The Master smiled wider. Yes, he purred. Come closer, little light. The things around me whispered, failure. Alone. Nothing. Their voices tangled like cobwebs, tugging at the soft places in my chest. I stopped halfway across the square. My heart hammered so loud it drowned them out for a second. And then I laughed. It ripped out of me, sharp and wild, and cracked right down the middle. Not pretty laughter. Not sane. The kind that tasted like relief when you've been holding your breath too long. The whispers stuttered. I laughed harder, clutching my ribs, head thrown back. Every fear they shoved at me. Evan's betrayal, Maya choking in that alley, the car, headlights blooming too late, broke against the sound like waves hitting rock. You want fear? My voice echoed against the buildings. Sorry, fresh out. I could feel it then. The heat building under my skin. The same one that had burned through me when I saved Maya. Only this time it didn't feel like it was breaking me apart. It felt like it belonged to me. The nearest shadow shrank back, its edges sizzling. I stepped forward, still laughing. You live on terror? On nightmares? That's sadder than my dating history. A ripple tore through the swarm. The Master hissed, eyes narrowing. Stop, he snapped. Make me, I shot back, and pushed. Not with my hands. With everything. The fear they wanted? I burned it out, scorched it with anger, with defiance, with something. Close to joy because I was still here and they couldn't make me crawl. Light tore through the square. Not sunlight, but something hotter, raw. The shadows screamed, their voices shredding the air. The Master staggered back, as the swarm recoiled, curling in on itself like paper in fire. Kael was suddenly there, sword in hand, carving through whatever tried to lunge at me, but there weren't many left. Most were already burning away and the light pouring out of my skin. The Master roared once, furious and afraid, before the heat ripped him apart too. An eruption of darkness and teeth and smoke that vanished like it had never been. Silence crashed down. The wind died. The last of the shadows bled into the cracks of the street and didn't come back. I stood shaking in the center of the square, smoke rising from the pavement around me. Kael caught my shoulders, steadying me. His eyes searched mine, relief sharp as glass there. Lian, he said slowly, like he wasn't sure I was still standing. I laughed again, softer this time. My knees wobbled, but I didn't fall. It's over, I whispered. Finally over. Dawn slipped into the city like it was afraid to be loud. The streets, washed in gray and pale gold, looked nothing like the battlefield from a few hours ago. No writhing shadows, no screams slicing the air, just overturned trash, cans, shattered windows, and the smell of rain clinging to everything. It was too quiet. I stood in the middle of the empty square where the Shadow Master had fallen, hugging my arms around myself. The last of the smoke had faded into nothing, like he'd never been here at all. Only the scorch marks on the pavement and the throb in my chest said otherwise. Kael stood a few steps away, head tipped back toward the faint light climbing over the skyline. The wind tugged at his coat like it didn't quite know him anymore. Because he was different. The gold in his eyes was gone. Not dimmed, gone. They were just eyes now. Human eyes, tired and dark, blinking against the sunrise like someone who hadn't seen it in a long time. The chain holding him to this world, whatever deal he'd made centuries ago, had snapped the moment the Master died. I felt it. A thread yanked free. He was free. You're staring, he said without looking at me. You look. I searched for the word. Mortal? Breakable? Real? Different. Feels different, Kael admitted. He flexed one hand slowly, like testing the weight of air. Like my blood isn't made of chains anymore. The wind carried a scrap of newspaper across the square, tumbling it between us before it disappeared down the nearest street. Somewhere, a car alarm cried faintly and gave up. I hadn't realized how heavy the city felt until it wasn't. When I laughed last night, when I stopped being afraid, that was what turned the tide. Not magic spells, not ancient weapons, just refusal. The shadows had wanted me trembling and small, but I'd laughed instead. At them. At myself. At the whole awful mess. And it burned them. I didn't feel like the same person now. The girl who tripped through Monday morning, who got hit by a car, who made bad coffee and worse decisions. She wasn't standing here anymore. I was. Kael finally looked at me. For the first time since I met him, he seemed unsure what to do with his hands. He'd spent centuries fighting, guarding, bargaining. And now, nothing to guard against. No contract yanking his strings. You're free, I said quietly. The corner of his mouth twitched like he almost smiled. Didn't think I'd see the day. The sunrise climbed higher, spilling weak gold across the rooftops. It painted his face in colors I hadn't seen before, soft instead of sharp, almost peaceful. So what happens now? I asked. Kael glanced at the horizon, then back at me. Now I figure out what living feels like. Been a while. There was a weight in that. Centuries of being bound. Of fighting someone else's war. And now he got to just be. I wondered what that would look like for him. For me, the air smelled like wet concrete and something sweeter, like the bakery down the block had started early. My muscles ached in places I didn't know existed, but under it all, there was this strange lightness. Not because everything was fixed. It wasn't. The city was a mess. My life was whatever came after mess, but the fear was gone. I didn't realize how much space it took up in my chest until it wasn't there anymore. Kael walked toward me, steps slow, like neither of us wanted to break the quiet. You did it, he said, laughed in their faces. Never seen anything like it. Neither have I admitted. My hands still felt warm from it, from that impossible burning defiance. He studied me for a long moment, something thoughtful in his expression. Feels like the start of something, he said at last. Yeah, I murmured, watching the sun push through the last scraps of cloud. Feels like living. By the time the sun climbed fully over the city, life had already begun pretending nothing happened. The coffee shop on 9th buzzed with Monday energy. Laptops open, mugs clinking, espresso hissing like some caffeinated dragon in the corner. No one looked like they'd spent last night hiding from nightmare creatures. People have short memories, apparently. Except for Evan. He was at the counter, trying to charm the barista into giving him a free refill. His voice carried just enough for everyone to hear. Big pitch today, huge client, I practically saved the whole project. I nearly choked on my latte when the screen above the counter lit up with breaking news. Some intern at the design firm had leaked the real project files, time-stamped, dated, all signed by me. The headline, Local Designer Outsmarts Solo Genius, credit where it's due. The barista glanced from the screen to Evan, back to the screen. Then handed him his coffee with a pitying look that could curdle milk. The table of students near the window started whispering loudly about plagiarism. Someone actually clapped. Evan left fast, face red enough to start fires. I grinned into my cup. The universe had taste after all. Later, Kael and I ended up on the roof of my building. The city spread out below, washed in early light, the last traces of chaos scrubbed clean by sunrise. No whispers in the alleys. No shapes clinging to windows. Just streets stretching quiet and empty like the world exhaled for the first time in years. Kael leaned against the railing, coat fluttering in the breeze. So this is what it looks like, he said. What? A morning without chains. He didn't say the word freedom, but it hung there anyway, soft and strange. I sat on the ledge, sipping the last of my coffee. Big plans for your first day as a free man? He considered. Sleep. Maybe figure out what people do when they're not busy fighting things in the dark. Brunch, I said. We do brunch. That almost smile tugged at his mouth again. We fell quiet for a while. The kind of quiet that wasn't awkward. Just new. Like we were both trying on the idea of living and seeing if it fit. Finally, he said, You burned half the city's nightmares last night. Then laughed about it. That doesn't scare you? I swung my legs against the brick. A little. But maybe it should. Maybe that's the point. I was scared of everything before. Now. I searched for the right words. Now it feels like mine. The fear. The choice. All of it. Kael nodded slowly, like he understood something I didn't have to say out loud. The breeze picked up, carrying the smell of coffee and wet concrete. Down below, a bus rattled by, ordinary as sunrise. We stayed until the shadows of the buildings stretched long across the streets. Until the city started moving again, Cars honking, vendors shouting, life shaking itself awake. Kael finally pushed off the railing. So, what will you do with your second chance? I watched the sunlight bounce off windows, warm and steady. Haven't decided yet. He raised a brow. No dramatic speeches, no big destiny plans. God, no. I hopped off the ledge, brushing brick dust off my jeans. I've had enough drama for 2 lifetimes. We reached the stairwell door. He held it open, looking at me with that unreadable expression that felt less unreadable now. Second life? I said, smiling a little. Might as well try it, just without the contracts this time.